Visuino Component Creation 01111011. For people that don't understand that, this is tutorial number 123 and using the pin and property data. Welcome back, Visuiners. Anyway, in this video we are going to show you how to use a basic analog component, get a signal in, do a little bit of math with it, and then output another variable. There's a property in this component. It's called the set point, and it basically is a slider that you can take from negative 0.5 to positive 0.5, and it's going to add or subtract that value to center a servo or center a signal or whatever you want to use it for. Okay. Also, I'm going to show you how to set up your template. Your code and everything in your component might look perfect, no problems, everything's hunky friggin' dory, but guess what? It just won't load, and there is a super simple reason for it, and I'm going to show you what it is. Alright, so first off, we're going to look at the vcomp file. If you haven't watched part 1 and part 2, number 121 and 122 of this video series, it will show you where the vcomp files are, their basic structure, how the H file is set and where it goes, and all of that. I'm not going to get back into it. Go watch the other videos, please. Thank you. Alright, so in this vcomp file, there is in line 3, 4, and 5. This is where it sets up a new category, a complete new category that you want. You can make your own 32 by 32 image file for it. It's a PNG, and you can see it right there. It's my little 3rd Infantry Division icon. If you set up your own category, you can install your own components into that category. Now be aware that there are a lot of hidden categories that are out there, like robots. Robots is actually a category. It's just that there are no components in that category yet in Visuino, so it does not show up. And I'm going to also show you how to get that going so you can add it to different categories as well as your own. So go watch the tutorial that shows you where the image files go and how to make them and things of that nature. Now remember, the plus sign in front on line 4, there's no plus sign. If I was to put the plus sign there, then this category would show up empty with no components in it. Okay? Alright, lines 7 through 11, that is where it includes the H file. The H file is called testing _ test offset. The class is where it sets the class of component, test offset, in the testing namespace. Testing namespace, test offset component. Create name, it actually names the component, no spaces or underscores in the name. And then where it says name, that's actually the name that's going to be put on top of the component. And then line number 11 category, the Arduino, aka Pigeon Kicker, that's the brand new class of category that we just made up in lines 3, 4, and 5. Now, at one point in time in this video, there is an error in my code. If you can find it and point it out, you will get an honorable mention. Keep an eye out. Alright, now line number 12, getting back to it, the plus sign adds the image file. That's all it does, is add it. If the plus sign wasn't there, it wouldn't add it, and you could use it as another portion to another component. Arduino test offset, that is the name of the PNG file. So the actual name is aka Pigeon Kicker dot test offset, or Arduino test offset. So that would add the icon to the toolbar over in the components list. The second portion of the line number 12, Arduino common analog flexible filter. There are a lot of already made components there that have the templates and the classes and everything all set up for you. The common analog flexible filter is one of them. What it has is it has an enable checkbox, it has an input pin, an output pin. That's it. That's all you get. So you got to add something to it, right? And that's what we did in line 14 and 15. We set a value range for a slider. It's going to be named offset, and this is a sync pin. It's got a sync pin enabled on it, and with a single equals 0, that is what it's going to set it at the beginning of the sketch. As soon as it runs, it's going to be set to 0. It's going to be a hidden slider unless you enable the sync pin, and the value range of the slider is from -0.5 to +0.5. That's what lines 14 and 15 do. Right, let's get into the second part of this, which is the H file in the libraries. But before we do that, I gotta beg you for your support. You can like, comment, share, or subscribe to the YouTube channel, or don't. It's all good. Hope you enjoy the video. Another way you can support us is by visiting our Patreon, patreon.com/aka Pigeon Kicker. All the code that's in this video will be available on the Patreon site. If you can, please help out. It will support Hank the Hexapod and other projects of this nature. Alright, now looking at the H file, the testing_test offset.h. The first portions of it, lines 13 through 15, what this does is it makes sure that the library file is defined in the code tab of Visuino. Sometimes if you use the component in a sketch, the H file won't get added correctly unless you have this defined. Gotta remember that. The next part, number 17, that adds it to the namespace testing. The namespace is nothing more than a collection of components and libraries. That's the namespace. With this, it's testing. For mine, it's going to be namespace aka Pigeon Kicker. It's going to be different than these. If you are making or using another component code from the vcomp file, like a metov component or one of mine or something like that, please define a new namespace. It avoids so many hassles. Like down the road, if there's a metov or an aka Pigeon Kicker or somebody else makes a component with the same namespace but has different code, it's going to create conflictions. So always make your own namespace. Alright, let's scroll down here a little bit and go to the template. Now, basically the template, it gives you pins, type names, and the class, whether they're public or protected, private, and things like that. One thing that took me forever to figure out, and actually I didn't figure it out, I had to ask Boyan what was going on. I mean, all the code was right. It looked like it should work, but all of the elements in the type name and class and all the definitions have to be in alphabetical order. That is a must. Not the order of the pin showing up. Alphabetical order. That's how they're shown in the properties, unless you create your blocks of properties and things like that. Alphabetical order. If they're not in alphabetical order, it just will not work. Okay, now continuing on, you're going to see line 30, 31, and 32. What this is it's going down the list of the type names. First one is the enabled pin, right? Is it enabled or not? That's a property. You know, it's not a pin coming in. It's just a checkbox in the properties box. And so is offset. Offset is also a property that has a sync pin that you can enable. so it doesn't show up as a pin. So those are named in the public space as a virtual property for those two. Now if you continue down the list of type names, you get to the output pin, and that is actually a pin. Virtual pin, output pin. And then let's say there was another property we had after O, like P, as in past, or something like that. You would have to put another underneath 34 and 35. You would have to add another public space with a virtual property of past or whatever. It has to be in alphabetical order. If they change the virtual type from property to pin or pin to property, you have to stop your public listing and name it again, because it's going to try setting it up as the same type and it won't work. Continuing down a little bit, you're going to see where we added a float value. Now this is a protected value. Protected means that it's only accessible within the test offsets class namespace. Alright, only this little bit of code is using that output value. Okay, in this is setting it up as a float, basically just an analog signal, and it is setting that output value to 0.5. And here it is also naming that value, that element, to output value, just like in regular Arduino code. Same thing. Alright, since we are using a common component that's already been made by Bowie and Mitov, it has an input pin and all this. Now line 41 right here, what it's basically doing is this is setting up a void, set of code that's going to be performed when the input pin receives any kind of data. Alright, when the input pin receives any kind of data, it's going to check to see if the enabled property is on. If it's not enabled, it's going to return. That means it's going to end this set of code and go to the next step in the loop. But if it is enabled, it's going to set the output pin to the value of that data that just came in, plus the offset. And then in the next set, it's going to check, because we're using analog and servos, we can't go above 1 or below 0. So it's going to check to see if it is below 0 or above 1 and correct it accordingly by setting it to 0 or 1. And then the last little bit on line 55, T output pin, that is the type name, output pin. Set the pin value is the command to send that data. And the data that we're sending to the output pin is the output value that we just figured out. This is basically going to run every time something comes into the input pin. There is no clock element on this. You can add one, but there isn't one here. So it's every time the system loop, Arduino code loop, comes through and it gets to this part of the code, it's going to run it. And if there's any kind of input on the data pin, it's going to run that and then update the output accordingly. Simple. Very, very simple. Okay, so to use it, you're just going to start a project, use whatever board you got to use, and then in the AKA Pigeon kicker over in the toolbar list right here, open it up, and there's a test offset B and a test offset A. We've already done the A, so we're going to go to the B. Okay, let's just go ahead and build it and load it up. I guess go ahead and make sure there's no errors that come in. From what I built it before, I just changed the offset value a little bit. So we're building, yeah, there it is. Added the library testing, uploading, going good, done. Look at that, and it's topping off at 1. It's not going above 1, and it's stopping at the 0.25 where it's set for the set point. Right, so there you go, your first or second Visuino component that you can Now figure out maybe how to add a couple values, do the math, things like this, change it around, maybe make your own, add different pins and so on and so forth. Make sure everything's in alphabetical order. Alrighty, for the YouTube video, make sure you like, share, subscribe, comment, or don't. It's all good, man. It's all good. For Patreon, please go visit us at patreon.com, aka Pigeon Kicker. And the code for this project will be available as a file download. There is no need to donate to get the download. Just go visit us, give us a like or something. And lastly, what error am I talking about? Earlier in the video I said, can you spot my error? The component's working. What error am I talking about? If you can figure it out, let me know in the comments somewhere, somehow, on any of the social medias. Let me know what you think my error is. And if you're right, and you're the first one to get it right, you're going to get an honorable mention on the next video and in the on the sites in the comments. So thank you for watching. Peace.